From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Barris here on a Monday. Hope you had a very pleasant weekend. We're back at it again here in the new year, as we're going to talk real estate this morning. We'll open up the phone lines if you'd like to join in the conversation. It's been about a month since we've seen our guest who's joining us, and I don't know how much has changed since he's last been on, but we are in 2024, and we're going to get into that. We can take phone calls as always, 737-7587, but we're in one of the hottest real estate markets in the entire country, and Bertie Gallerani is one of the very top real estate agents, if not the top real estate agent here in Middle Tennessee. I know you don't like it. You're humble. You don't like it when I put out these nice platitudes, you know, touting your accomplishments, but you do sell a heck of a lot of houses.
Well,
no, oh, come on.
I would say this. There's a lot of good realtors out there.
Yeah.
So I think I've said this before. We just do it at a very high level.
Right.
So we have a big group of people that we work with, so it allows us to sell a lot more houses.
And by the way, just the way it sets up, there are companies like yourself where there's you and you have a large staff of real estate agents that work for you. Are there real estate agents that just freelance, do it on their own, right?
Well, most do.
Most do, just by themselves.
Do.
They don't necessarily join one of the big companies or something like that.
Well, I would say that they affiliate with some sort of a firm, like a brokerage firm that has a lot of realtors in it. I think the folks that I work with are wanting to work under the program in which I've worked for many years. So for us, for our company, it's really agents that are more dedicated to the business. And I don't want to degrade anybody who works really hard in any of these industries that we work in, but our people work extremely hard in the work that we do. So it just takes a different kind of person, I think, someone that just really wants to see the full potential of what they can accomplish out of the real estate industry.
Okay, and I'm curious, though, if someone is that driven, what are the benefits they would get from working with you, as opposed to using that same drive, just setting up themselves, maybe through some of these other companies, but really being more independent? Is it that, are there more resources available through? Of course, they get to learn from someone like you who's been at this for so long, but what are the advantages?
Well, I'll use it in a different way. So before I got into real estate over 20 years ago, I used to be in franchise sales. And when you look at the difference, and we'll use a McDonald's as an example, or Taco Bell or whatever, right? The level of success, if you're an entrepreneur and you open up a franchise business, the level of that success is much greater than if you just open up Pete's Taco Stand on the corner, right?
Because it has the name recognition.
It has a name recognition. Not only that, but it has an operating system. It has things that it's done successfully for years and years to become who they are in order to be successful. I would say that's a lot like how our team is. So we have a proven method. Before I ever allowed agents to work within the company, it was just myself. I was personally selling about 150 homes a year. So the average agent sells about 4 homes a year, and 50% of the agents today don't sell any homes even in a year. So the per person productivity per agent is very low, industry standard. So what we do is we have brought them into our system, allowed them to work the methods in which I've worked for many years, and our average is about 30 transactions or 30 home sales per agent. So like a franchise, we just teach them how to do it the right way. Okay,
and it just boggles my mind the first time you told me that the average agent sometimes, not with you, but elsewhere, 4 houses maybe a year, and many of them no houses a year, which makes me wonder how they make a living.
50%. 0 houses.
Okay, so is it that because it's just that competitive? You get your business, I'm guessing, through word of mouth, satisfied customers, referral, advertising. You're on a show like this. What's the difference? I'm just curious that backside. Okay. We'll get into the real estate stuff.
I think it's just what it is. It's how to treat the customer right, how to make sure that the transaction is done correctly so the customer feels like they're treated correctly. So it's teaching them those basic techniques of service, right? Customer service. Marketing, so it's very expensive, right? Our company spends a couple $1 million a year in marketing for people calling us. So online marketing, shows like this, billboards, radio ads, promoting yourself, right? Things like instant offer, guaranteed offer, things that make the phones ring. Most agents couldn't couldn't afford to come right out of the gate and spend that kind of money, right? It'd be like you wanting to open up a TV station, right? You're not going to open a station like this.
Right.
You're going to start probably a lot smaller, right? And so what we do is we allow the agent, the brand new agent in the business, to come in and then be exposed to a multi-million-dollar marketing budget, a facility, a franchise-type operating system where they step right in. They have assistants already. They have sign runners. They have a marketing department. And so they can just sell and be a connector of people than to worry about all the minutia that goes with operating a business.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, all right, listen, we're in the new year, 2024. Haven't seen you. Happy New Year.
I know. I mean, the station, I think, shut me down in December. So
there's been a lot of stuff going on, not to mention the snow and ice and all of that. But it's good to have you back. And I don't know, is there anything that when you kick off a new year, do things change in any way for you? Maybe you just pick up where you left off, right?
Well, I mean, every year on January 1st, we all start at zero because whatever happened in 23 is over. So, yes, I think you reflect a little bit on what you could have done for the business differently and what you could have done for your client and your customer differently. As a coach and a trainer in the real estate industry, I have to coach and train the people that work inside the company. So
you're busy with that.
So I'm working on that a lot.
I'm wondering, from the real estate, sale of homes aspect, I've always kind of thought to myself, well, if I was going to move, I mean, I probably wouldn't move during the holidays. I may move during the winter, but I mean, does it slow down a bit through December and into January? Now, is it about now in the new year maybe that people start looking to move? I don't know. I mean, who wants to move at Christmas? Maybe it happens.
And actually, I'm so glad you brought it up, because October, November, December, so we'll say quarter four, last quarter of the year, okay? Typically, most sellers will believe that the market is down.
Yeah,
right?
I guess.
Who buys during Thanksgiving and who purchases during Christmas? But yet, it's actually one of the most productive 2 or 3 months of the year. And the reason why is because the business is filled with people that are what we call half-to sales, right? So, for example, you get a job transfer from, I just spent 3 weeks in Florida, so in sunny Florida. I missed the snow here, thank goodness. But if they're coming from Florida to Tennessee, and they have to move.
Okay, if you have to move, it's a job or something, and like you said.
Correct.
So you're saying during that
if you have to
there's
move,
a bunch of have-to-moves.
There's a lot of have-to-moves. There's a ton of have-to-moves. Matter of fact, think about this. If you're a new employee for a company and the company is now ramping up for their new year, they start to hire in the fourth quarter, then they ask that you start the 1st of January, and you're there to buy a home, so you're transferring in. So this is where we get a lot of home purchases from people who transfer from state to state. We get a lot of rentals, so higher-end rentals where people will come in and rent for 3 to 6 months while they're looking for a home. So there's a lot of activity, right? We still have what we call the three Ds: the death, the divorce, and the destitute. Okay, so we always have those that have to sell for whatever reason, right? A passing in a family. You have a divorce. Divorce is rampant, right? It happens a lot. So we have those kind of situations where you have to sell the home. And you have a lot of financial issues.
But those things happen year-round.
They do. They happen year-round. But what's important for people to understand is that, here's what's really great. If you wait till the spring, let's just say, I'm going to wait till the spring, and can I share with you why people want to wait till the spring? Okay. The sun's out. Yeah. The grass is green. The trees have leaves on them. They believe that the weather is better, so they're in a better mood to buy. And all of that is true. Okay, all of that is true. But yet, if all of the sellers wait to sell in the spring, then you're saturated with houses, and the competition gets more fierce. And you see, a lot of sellers believe that they'll get more money in the spring because of those factors, but yet in reality that's not true, because everybody decides they want to sell in the spring. What we find is most of the sellers get most of their money in the fourth quarter, October, November, December, because who wants to sell during Thanksgiving and who wants to sell during Christmas? Not a lot of people, right, in the eyes of sellers.
Yeah, they don't want to move at that point, right.
But yet you still have a lot of people purchasing homes during those times. And so what happens is the sellers get very good prices for their homes typically in October, November, December.
Because there aren't that many.
There's not that much competition.
Dang it. It's funny. I mean, you just dispelled something that I believed for years. Not that it's really manifested itself in the way I've done things. We sold when we had to, like you said. Yeah. I did not know that. It makes sense. Listen, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get into more of the details with Bernie about what our market is like here. And, part of it is there's folks who are established here in the homes you're going to go. But I talked with him last time he was on about my son. You know, he was out of college, got his first job, and in his mind, and a lot of young people's minds, I'm never going to be able to afford a house these days. I mean, this is my lot in life. I'm going to be renting forever, and he says that's not the case. So we'll get into that. We can take some of your phone calls if you'd like to join. If you're thinking of selling or buying, the number's on the screen. We'll be back with Bernie right after this. We are back on Morning Line. Bernie Gallerani's with us. He's a real estate agent here in Middle Tennessee. He's a regular on this show, and I've learned a ton from him in the short time. We've had a lot of real estate agents on. You're the best I've ever had on here.
Oh, well, thank you.
I don't mean that. Just say, come on, we're friends, you know. You may buy an ad here or there. But it's true. Every time you come on, I learn something from you, dude.
Well, I mean, the good news is I've been a part of 7,000 home transactions, and so
voice of experience.
There's been a lot of things. My wife's our broker and manages every file.
She the brains of the operation?
She is, yeah, and the looks. But she handles every file. So I think about my participation in 7,000 files, and I think about her participation, which is a whole different level. Mm-hmm. And she's probably, to me, the smartest person in the industry that I've ever met, just because of the things that she's had to do in the business. So if I have a lot of questions, I just go to her because she's...
That's nice. Keep it all in the family,
She's smarter than I am.
Well, listen, the number 737-7587. Let's just hit on this point then. A lot of folks these days, first-time home buyers, people that are renters, whatever, there still seems, especially in this area, because of the cost and the increase of everything, that a lot of people feel, especially young people coming out of college, maybe a year or two renting, thinking, well, they can never afford to buy a house. And they look at some of these prices and they go, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? What do you say? And do you have some of those clients come to you? And how do you work with them?
Gosh, there's so many great programs, too, right now. And I think we've shed some light on that in some earlier shows, which we'll go into again here. I think it comes down to one really important thing, and it's not that folks, buyers, we'll say in this case, buyers in general, whether you're first time or whether you're been a buyer in the past and now you're renting. Buyers are looking at what they want, the cost to borrow money, and that payment between what they want, and the key word is want, and what it's going to cost them monthly to have it, because of the interest rates are causing them not to purchase at all. Okay.
And the other, that, and also, isn't the down payment also the thing that hits them in the chops?
I mean, it's been 3.5%. You can get in an FHA for 3.5%, and almost everybody can qualify for that. So for 3.5%. Whatever.
$300,000, $250,000 home.
Yeah. So if you look, here's what's really great though. If you put 3.5% down, you're like, well, what about closing costs? Right now, because of the amount of inventory that's on the market for sellers and the sellers wanting to sell their homes, sellers are now contributing to the buyer's closing costs. So really, if you look at down payment money at 3.5%, right? So you figure, let's just say it's, $10,000 or $12,000, right? Whatever that number might be, depending on the price point of the home that you're trying to purchase. So is it significant? Well, I mean, $10,000 or $12,000, you can find $10,000 or $12,000. You can even have that money gifted to you from a relative. It's not even like you have to have the $10,000 or $12,000 or $15,000. Somebody can gift that money to you.
Well, that's what we've actually said. It's not like I have $10,000 growing on, a tree that I can just pick and give to my son. But we said we would help him with a down payment. Because that's the one thing that hits him in the chops. Because isn't it true though? If you find the right price, he could end up paying less on his mortgage per month than he is for rent.
So I worked on this here a little bit for us. Okay. So I want the listeners to pay attention to where they're losing money. Okay. All right. So if you look at this first thing that I gave you, this is if you purchase a home at $300,000.
All right.
Okay. You would have a house payment of about $2,132. All right. Now, if you look down at the very bottom down here, it says rental. Okay. So let's assume that you started a rental process of $1,800 a month. So we just kind of took we looked at what rents were going for here in Davidson County. You can get into like a one-bedroom for $1,800, a two-bedroom for about $2,000. So we just put $1,800. So you're looking at an $1,800 for the first year. You're spending $1,800 a month, which equates to $21,000 a year. Okay. But what we're also finding is that your rental rates are increasing about $100 every year when you renew that lease.
That lease, right?
Okay. So, but I don't want to get too deep into the analytical weeds because this could get confusing. But I want you to look at the 5-year projection. If you bought a home and you paid $2,100 in a mortgage payment on the $300,000 note, at the end you would have equity of that property. If you look up here, I've written this down up here. Actually, I had my lender do this for me. But if you look over here, you would have $82,884 in equity if you had a 5% increase annually. Now, over the last 12 months, we've had more than a 5%. Wilson County, we just talked about, I think, off air, that we had a 3% in December, or we've averaged about a 3%. But normally, we would average about a 5 to 7 to 8% increase in property value. Well, what's really interesting is you're spending... So if you look at the difference in what you're spending here in rent over 5 years, because now you're developing...
your rent keeps going up.
Your rent goes up, but what's really interesting here, Nick, is look at the equity over here. How much equity are you getting in renting?
Nothing at all.
Zero. No equity whatsoever. So if your rent is $1,800, next year it's going to be $1,900, and 2 more years it's going to be $2,000, $2,100, whatever, right? If you look at the purchase, your payment is $2,100, right?
Yep.
But at the end of 5 years, over on the rental side, you have zero equity.
Right, zero equity.
But if you balance out the difference in the rent versus the house ownership, you actually net yourself $78,500.
Yep.
So here's the question for your son. Is over the next 5 years, if he rents, he's going to end up paying about... I think I wrote this number
by the 5th year, he'll be paying more than what his rent is. I mean,
that's exactly right. And so when you look at this, at the end, he's going to end up paying. He's going to end up paying more by the 5th year in his mortgage payment and have zero equity. In this case, he pays a little bit more from year 1 because of the interest rate today.
Right.
But in the end, he's giving up $78,000, and this is over a 60-month period of time.
Think about that.
So your son, who we've talked about in shows past. Who says, God, I don't know if I can afford to buy. Here's really what he needs to look at. How could he afford not to do it? What he's essentially doing by choosing to rent is he's giving away nearly $80,000 of money that could have been developed in home ownership.
So many people are renting, and that's happening to them. Okay, the argument to rent would be you're not going to be in a place very long, right? I mean, you don't want to buy necessarily, like you wouldn't say, yeah, buy this house, Huey, who's my son, if you're going to sell it the year later maybe, or something like that. Well, unless it's in a really hot market, or would you say go for it? I mean, why is it? Give me the rationale. Why are people renting so much?
Well, I mean, by the time you pay the fees to purchase, you would want to own it. I don't think really people buy to own for 1 year.
No. They have to be. So I'm just saying, if you're a nomad and you're going to be moving around, it makes sense maybe you're going to rent.
Do you know what the average home owner... You know how often they sell on average?
No.
Every 5 years.
Wow.
Okay. So every 5 years, that's average. Some will sell in 2 or 3, and others will live 10 or 12. I've been in my home for over 12 years.
I would have thought it would have been a little more than that, longer.
5 years.
Because moving is such a drag.
It is. But here's the thing. If you're going to buy something for a year, well, I'm going to give myself 1 year and I'm going to purchase this. Don't do it. Just rent and go find something. But if you're going to say I'm going to live there for 3 years or 4 years, then purchase. Because even if we took this equation out of here, instead of making in let's just say 2.5 years, you would have just under $40,000 of equity in the home.
Yeah, it's just...
Now, 1 year doesn't make a ton of sense. At 5%, you got $15,000. It costs you that to move into the home.
Yeah.
Between your down payment money, which, by the way, any money you put into your home, let's use $15,000 as your down payment. Okay.
Yeah.
Your home's a bank account.
Yeah.
So if you put $15,000 in it today, and 12 months later you sell it, you take your $15,000 back out. Correct?
Well, yeah, I guess, out of what you sell it for.
Yeah, except for now you have selling expenses.
Yeah.
So now selling it could eat up that $15,000.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
So that's why 1 year doesn't make a ton of sense. But 5 years or 3 years makes nothing but sense. So what I want to say to the folks that are renting today, if you're renting, in 3 years, you end up with zero money left over. You just spend. When you purchase, let's just say over the next, we'll say 5 years, that's what I have here. In 5 years, you develop almost $80,000 in equity on the property. Well, you have an interest rate tax write-off, right? You get to write off some of those taxes, which is really great, right? And you have pride of home ownership. The only difference is, look at this, $2,100 on this payment of $300,000. You're spending an extra, what do we have, $300 a month. You're spending an extra $300, but in the end, you're gaining $80,000.
Yeah, and you said 3 years. If you're in there just for 3 years, which was the number you said, it's worth it if it's up to 3. You still get $47,000 in equity. You know, I guess maybe part of the issue then for some is that they don't have a crystal ball and they're not sure what's going to happen, so they stay renting. And I have a friend of mine who was renting a 3-bedroom apartment because he had a family with kids. And he was like, I was like, why don't you buy? Why don't you buy? Why don't you? And this was before the market exploded around. He goes, well, I'm just not sure where I'm at. 15 years later. And I'm thinking, do you know how much equity you would have? And you know how much he was paying in rent for a 3-bedroom apartment for 15 years? But it just happened. And he took it on the chin for that, right? How much? He would have had a ton of money.
My wife and I own several rental properties. Yeah. And we have long-term renters just based on how we structure our program. So we have renters staying in there 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and they're just renting from us. And we love that as an investor and as a landlord, but in the end, they've developed zero equity. Who received the equity? I did, right? And so what I would say to a renter is apartment buildings or landlords like myself, we're in the business to develop the rental income and or the equity position. Yeah. So what is they're paying the rent, but the landlord is receiving the benefit.
Equity. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah, you're getting it. Exactly. Someone's getting equity here.
They're paying for a shelter to be over their head, right, and a place for their family, and they're willing to accept the $1,800 in rent, or let's just say $2,000, because it continues to grow. Here's what's awesome. In 5 years, you have a $2,132 payment on year 1. And on year 5, you have a $2,100.32 payment. But if you look over here in year 5, you have a $2,300 payment.
And the rent.
Because the rent
goes
keeps
up
going
every
up.
$100. Yeah, because you're locked in to your mortgage, obviously.
That's exactly right. Here's what's really great. You can always refinance it. So a lot of folks are saying, well, I want to wait till the interest rate goes down. Well, why don't? There's a thing called date the rate. Yeah. And what you do is you date the rate. You don't marry it. You date the rate. You wait for the rate to come down. Then you refinance it. And so, I believe that renters, and I understand. Here's where I think the misconception is. I can't get the house I want because the payment's too high, so I'm going to rent something. It's a better value for us. What I would say is lower the standard in which the price of the home that you want. Get into something. Yeah. Hold on to it for 3, 4, 5 years. You're going to be renting anyway, and then work your way up.
I wonder, I know you're not a financial advisor, but I'm curious, if someone purchased it, like my son, he's like, okay, I've got this now, but I want to try to pay it off as quickly as I can. Now, he gets maybe a 30-year mortgage or whatever. What are your thoughts on paying an extra couple $100 every month toward the principal along with your payment? What do you think of that?
In full disclosure, as you said, I'm not a tax person. But I think that if I remember this right, my wife and I did that with our home, a little bit differently, but we did do that. But if you make one extra payment per year, you bring that 30-year mortgage down to 18 years.
Okay, so it's worth doing if you can afford to do that.
If you can afford to do it. Anything you can take off that principal, so every month if he wrote an extra $20 on that check, it actually takes more of that as it goes along and adds more of that to the principal just by process of taking the principal off the interest rate.
That's what we're doing with our house now. I think I pay an extra $200 or $300 every month on my mortgage. So that's, as you said, and that's more. So it's when you accumulate that, that's more than a single payment on my mortgage. So it adds up. And so
absolutely. So you'll probably pay that in more like 16 years.
See, boy, awesome. Let's take a call from Garrett. I'm glad I asked you that because I was wondering. Garrett, good morning. Hey, Garrett.
Hey, morning, guys.
Good morning.
You talk about your son and the situation that people with first-time buyers are in. I've got a physical therapist that's in the same situation. He and his wife are both young workers. I went through this in L.A. We wanted to buy our first home. Maria lived in Hollywood. I lived at the beach, but she owned her mom's house and I rented. So what are we going to do? We're going to buy a house. We couldn't afford a house in L.A. We had to commute. We had to move out to the bedroom communities. We moved up to San Bernardino County, out to Rancho Cucamonga, where they were buying for $116,000. And we got a little 3.5% loan down FHA. And even farther out, the farther out you went, the cheaper they were. And that 10 freeway was stacked up with people trying to get back into LA to go to work. But you got to pay your dues, and you got to commute. You can't use these numbers in accordance to Nashville's market for a first-time buyer. Rent versus buy. Yeah, the rent's high, but the house payment's high. You can't do it. You got to move out and get into Fairview or some of the surrounding communities, buy your first house, get a few years equity, and then come back.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you're not saying my son should buy something in Belmead. I mean, he's going to need to come here, and Garrett's right.
Garrett is 100% right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is a lot, especially these younger folks, right, they want to live downtown, and they're like, well, I want to live downtown. I want to have this lifestyle. And I guess if I was 20-something years old, it probably makes sense.
I can understand that, yeah.
But yet, in the same time, Garrett's right. When you're ready for home ownership, if you're really ready for home ownership, and this is the question for all the renters that are considering or thinking of buying, if you're really ready, as Garrett said, there's options. You can move outside of the city. You may have to travel. Are you going to fight some traffic in? I live in Hendersonville. I fought traffic coming down to Nashville this morning. It's just part of how it works. It's a priority to me to be on the show, and so what I did was I fought the traffic this morning to come down into Nashville. If I come and list properties down here, or I have clients down in this area, regardless of the time that I have to travel, I have to fight that particular traffic if it's during rush hour. You have to make a sacrifice, but here's what I love about what Garrett said. $80,000 a year in 5 years and 60 months, based on these numbers, is what you're giving up. So you're saying, well, I'd rather live downtown. Perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with any of that. You're just giving up $80,000 to have that luxury to live downtown and rent.
Yeah, and for maybe some young people, as we go to break, for a year or two, living in downtown Nashville and having a ball, hey, that's fine.
Nothing wrong with that.
You know, but the time will come when you're saying, hey, I'm ready for home ownership. I want a yard for my dog.
Yes. Well, I want to thank Garrett for that call, because that was so great that you will sacrifice, but it's worth it.
Take a break on that note. More with wisdom from Bernie Gallerani right after this. Stay with us. We are back on MorningLine. Real estate agent Bernie Gallerani here with us, talking about the real estate market. Boy, I'm going to show this stuff to my son. These numbers you just brought in about just how much equity you give up when you're renting. And I don't know how many people are watching this program now that are renting. And again, we're not knocking renters. I rented for years. Had I known some of this, I probably wouldn't have rented as long. Part of it is I was a nomad until I finally got to a place where I settled down. Like you said, at least 3 years. Go for it. By the way, some of the crazy mortgages of the days gone by, they're gone. I mean, ARMs are gone, right? Adjustable rate mortgages.
You still,
Thankfully,
they're pretty much.
I mean, you want to lock yourself in, especially you know, with the rates as they are. Now, you think
I wrote them down today.
What do you
rates
got?
This morning were 6.9 for a 30-year, a 6.3 for a 15-year, and a 6.20. If you do FHA, which is the 3.5% down, you can get it for 6.2. But watch, this is going to be fun. You can now do a 2-1 or a 3-1 buy down. All right. So for example, we'll use your son. Yeah. He wants to come in. He says, okay, I want to buy a home, but I don't want to pay these crazy rates.
And by the way, before you say crazy rates, people who call those crazy now don't remember years ago. Those rates are pretty darn good. You got all spoiled from when it was 1-2% when we were going through this horrible recession and everything. I mean, rates were 16%, okay? Whatever.
I think my wife and I paid back in, we bought our first home a long time ago. We paid, I think, 7%. Okay. And that was, rates were normal. And then our parents at that time were like, when we were at 12, 13, 14%.
Like that. That's what I'm referring to way back then with my folks. But, I mean, 6% is low. It's low.
It's low. It's not stupid, crazy 3% low.
Yeah, and I know what you mean by saying crazy. By comparison, it's double what it was. But I mean, that is not a bad interest rate.
This interest rate here, it's interesting because everyone will say that it's low, and it is. Or sorry, it's high, and it is if you look at a 3.5.
Right.
Or you look at a 3.2. But we've never had a 3.2 or we've never had a 3.5 until we had COVID.
Right.
So what I would hope the consumer will consider is we also didn't have all the crazy debt and checks. Everyone was getting checks in the mail, right? And so that rate was to stimulate the economy. Yes. And it did its job.
Yeah, and it's not going to get that low again.
Kudos for those that brought them down. The checks were fine. All that stuff was really great. But now you got to pay the piper. And so now once you loan money out, you got to get money back, right? And so what's happening is the rates that are up at 6% are just up to be normal, to where they should be. That creates the economy to be healthy, right? I think I just saw saw a report yesterday, a day before yesterday, something that said talking about how consumer spending is doing really well and the country's financially it's strong. That is a really good sign. And when the country is strong, it's because we're paying back money and we can get a higher rate, and people are buying it. And what's really awesome is buyers today, and this is what I would tell your son or anybody else who's sitting down waiting for interest rates to lower.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not going to probably happen.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
it's probably not. You're going to wait a long
get down
time.
into the fives? Maybe. But we were in the fives, 5.9 or something somewhat recently on an FHA. It's gone up to 6.2, I'm sorry, to 5.9. But it's going to fluctuate like that. We're not going to see a 3.5. We're not going to see a 4.5. It's not going to happen. And so if we're waiting for that to happen, why not buy at a 6.20 on an FHA, date the rate for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and if it lowers to a 4.5, refinance it. And if not, it could go back up, and you'll thank heavens that you made this choice.
Right. And what were you saying? What are buy downs?
So buy down. So what we have now is we have, and by the way, I work with a guy named Michael Hoyer at Experience Mortgage, and he did a lot of this for me, which was really great and very thankful for him. We can do a buy down rate now. So your son can come in, and he can, if he wants, ask the seller to purchase his rate down. So if he buys a home, finds a condo, a townhome, a home that he wants, instead of maybe asking for closing costs, maybe what he can do is ask for a buy down rate.
Which means what?
So what they do is they take you can. Let's just use 10,000. You can take $10,000. It could be 12. It could be 7,000. Just depends on what you get. And you buy the rate down 1 or 2 or even 3 points. So for example, let's just say we'll use a 2-1 buy down, and it's at 6%. You can actually get a 4 to 5% rate for 1 year, and then it goes up 1%. Then it goes up to the current rate the third year.
So who's covering that? The buyers or the seller is?
Well, anybody can purchase the buy down. But if your son, let's just use your son as an example, if he goes to the seller and says, hey, listen, I'm going to ask for an additional $10,000 for my buy down rate or for closing costs, then the seller can contribute, if they choose to, the rate down. So what happens is now your son, instead of having a 6.2, has a 5.2 or a 4.2 interest rate for the first year. The second year it goes up 1 point. So let's say he has a 4.2, it goes up to a 5.2, and then the third year it goes up to the current interest rate. Does that make sense? So if you're a home purchaser today, the interest rates should not be your problem, because there's programs out there today. A caller could call in, or somebody who's watching could say, well, gosh, Bernie, it's still going to cost, let's just say $8,000 or $10,000. Yes, but what we're finding is that the buyers are getting creative by concessions from the seller so they can buy this rate down.
And why is the seller giving the concessions?
Because there's so much inventory
that they have to do this because they want to sell the house.
That's correct. And what's interesting is the seller has an abundance amount of equity in their home. If they purchased their home previous to 2020, and I think I said this on the last show, they have about 65% equity in their home at this point. Now, is that going to drop? It potentially could. I mean, I don't know. But right now, it's about 65%. So if they bought it in 2018, 2019, their home value has increased 65%. So they're sitting on nothing but cash in that home, or they should be anyway. If you came to them and said, hey, listen, I need $10,000, I'll buy your home. You've been on the market for 2 or 3 months. I'll buy your home, but I'm asking you to contribute $10,000 to buy my rate down. A lot of sellers will agree
to that.
Yes.
Okay, is that something that they ask you to negotiate for them?
Yes. So what happens is we don't suggest it to them, but if it comes to us from a buyer, we have to present everything that comes to us. We're, a realtor is really nothing more than a person in the middle. Right? And so we get the offer, we present it to the seller, we listen to the seller, and then we present that back to the buyer. All that being said, our team right now is making a lot of these types of offers to sellers, and they are getting accepted in our world. So if a seller doesn't like it, they don't have to accept it. But a buyer, it's an advantage to a buyer, and a buyer should be taking advantage of this.
So if you're representing, say, my son, and he's saying, well, Bernie, is there a way we can work this out? You may say, well, let's see what let's see what
the seller's willing to do.
If they're willing, and you bounce that off and see.
Correct. And what's going to determine that is how long that seller's been on the market, how motivated that seller is to sell the property, right? Because just because everybody has a sign in their yard and they have a for sale sign doesn't mean that they'll do what's necessary in this market to sell their home. And that's really where the biggest difference comes in today, and that is a seller at a point in selling their home where they will do what is necessary in order to cause a buyer to agree to a contract, that's really the big question today. Because just because you have your home on the market doesn't mean it's actually priced to sell.
Boy, you're right about that. You know, I live out on Tater Peeler Road in Wilson County.
I know where that is.
Do you? It's off of Chicken Road and Stumpy Lane. And it's kind of like, it's a very nice area. And, you know, for a period of time there, when we moved in, and we've been there now 4 years, every time there was a for sale sign, it was gone pretty quick. But over the past 16 months or so, there have been some signs that have been up there for quite some time at places. And my wife's great. She's on there checking. You'd like her. I mean, she's always checking. A lot of these prices were priced the way they were back when, and they haven't adapted. And they were sitting there not selling for a while. So the idea of pricing, you know, getting the right price if you're selling. Eventually, I mean, it's been on the market, some of these houses or these properties for quite some time. They just have to get back around and lower the price. Is that basically it to get it sold now?
Well, I think that there's a couple things. One of it is exposing it in the right areas so that...
Well, of course, if you can live next to Nick Barris, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Well, that's a perk.
That's a perk.
And you might be able to get more.
That's a perk. No real loud parties. No. There's nothing right next to me, fortunately. But, I mean, I'm just wondering, though, yeah, they have to decide... Some of them started selling. We went back and looked, and they lowered the price, which makes sense, right?
Well, it's when the market is super strong, like it was in 21 and 22. When people make offers, there's multiple offers on it. House values go up. Right. When you have a home on the market and you want to sell it, you and I were talking about widgets earlier, right? If you have a supply of homes for sale and there aren't enough buyers, then there has to be some sort of a competitiveness to those sellers. And if you have 10 homes for sale and you only have 3 buyers, 7 of those homes are not going to get sold every month. And then the next month you're going to get 3 or 4 or 5 more homes getting the market. So you're always in competition. What's interesting about the folks that you just talked about that are neighbors, it's not that they didn't want the price they originally listed it for. It's not that they felt like they wanted to adjust that price. But the market, the buyers told them they needed to, either based on exposure, meaning was it exposed properly to the market, or is it exposed properly and the buyers are saying no to the price.
All right, we'll take a break on that note. We'll be back. Our final segment with our guest right after this. We are back on Morning Line. If only you could listen in during commercial breaks. It just goes on with Bernie Gallerani on Absolute Auctions and the like. Hey, listen, I wanted to make sure, we always kind of update this because you have something new you're doing. I want to just talk about the instant offer. We're talking about selling and how this goes. Instant offers, we see them on TV all the time. You guys offer them as well. And then guaranteed sale 90 days. That's kind of new, right?
Yeah, so I'll just start with the instant offer. Okay. So if you, just like there's several other ones around town that are like this, where we'll come write you an offer for the property. You won't have any showings of the property. There'll be 0 repairs. You pick the close date. We write you a check. You close. We buy the house.
That's okay. All
right. Typically, if you call our office, we'll bring you the offer when we come right to the house. Okay. So you call us, say, hey, I live at this address. We send an agent out to your house. They will bring you the offer at that particular time. You'll say yay or nay. We'll talk about a marketing plan. Maybe we can get more in the retail market, maybe more on the instant offer. We're not sure. But that's how that program works. The other new program that we have is a guaranteed sale offer. So if we come out and we list your home and the home does not sell, or we don't sell the home within 90 days, we'll actually buy that home from you after 90 days. So we list the property, we market the property, we price it in the retail market. If that home through the first 90 days doesn't sell, we will actually purchase that home from you. Now, we do have our same fees associated with the instant offer program that are associated with the guaranteed sale program. So we'll apply those fees to it. But either way, whether you list it and we buy it from you in 90 days, or whether we buy it from you right away and you want to move and get out of town, or go to your new home, or whatever it is that you have planned for your next sale, we just write you a check, we close on it within 14 days, and we're done.
So you would be paying for the home after 90 days if it doesn't sell at the list price?
Well, the price of the property will be determined by the agent when we list the property. So, for example, can I give you an example?
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's what's good.
So we'll go in and we'll say we suggest a price of this retail price. Okay, let's just say $500,000.
Okay, so we got a house $500,000.
$500,000. So we'll come in and go, okay, we got a house of $500,000. Mm-hmm. You say, well, I was hoping to get $550,000.
Okay.
And we're going to say, well, right now the buyers are paying $500,000, right? Just based on the comps, the comparables, this is what they're paying for the home today. Okay. You say, well, I want to try it at $550,000. We don't sell it at $550,000. In 90 days, our price is still $500,000. Does this make sense? Because that's how we started.
Yeah, right.
And then we have our commission and our marketing fees associated to it. So we just take that off that $500,000 and then we write you a check.
Okay, now if you say $500,000 to me and I go, well, that sounds good. Let's put it up for $500,000. And it doesn't sell. Then, I mean, we're in agreement. Let's say we're in agreement. At the end of that, and it doesn't sell after the 90 days,
correct.
Then it's same thing.
Same deal. So it's still, if we put it up at $500,000 and we don't sell the property within 90 days together, we still buy it at that $500,000 minus our fees.
But I guess if I'm someone, like, I see what you did there. If you said $500,000, I said, well, all right, so I've got that guaranteed $500,000, but let's take a shot at $575,000 or whatever.
Correct.
So let's put it out there. If it doesn't sell within 90 days, all right, I didn't get it. You guys were right. The market isn't there. Then you'll buy it from me for $500,000 minus
the fees that I have, which you have commission fees associated, and we have a marketing fee associated with that, which are taken off the top. But here's what's really interesting, and this is the part I want the viewers to hear. Usually, if we say $500,000, normally the seller wants more. Usually when the seller wants more, which is almost 90% of the time, it actually doesn't sell until it gets down to the number we originally suggested anyway.
Okay, and I guess that's just...
So they're going to be making price adjustments normally anyway.
Coming down slowly,
yeah, because of the amount of homes we sell, it's not only do we look at the 600 homes we sell a year, but look at the 7,000 that we've sold over the last, let's say, 20 years. We understand pricing of homes fairly well, and I'm not saying we don't make mistakes. We do. We make mistakes all the time, and it happens. But we eat the mistake. You don't. So if we say, we'll say $500,000. You say, okay, that's great, and it doesn't sell. The $500,000 is still the number. We just eat the mistake. You eat the mistake.
Not you. And again, you're pretty dead on whatever price you come on.
We're pretty close.
You have to. I would think you would be pretty close on that. Now, still, given your druthers, if a seller says, I'd like to go $550,000, and it works out, you're loving that because that's more money for everyone, right?
Well, think about this. Let's just say I'm off by 10%. I've missed the mark by 10% on a $500,000 home. That's $50,000. That's the $50,000 that I have to eat.
How would that work out? Okay, so
in other words, let's just say I said it was worth $500,000. But I'm off by 10%. There's something going on there that I didn't see, and that makes the house really worth $450,000, not $500,000.
Oh, I see.
I told you I'd give you $500,000.
I got you.
I eat the $50,000, so you get the $50,000, and you don't have to worry about the $450,000 because I'll pay you.
Meaning that you might end up having to buy that at $500,000, and you've got this inventory.
And I got to turn around and try to sell it for $450,000.
I bet that doesn't happen much with you.
Well, it can, and that's why you got to be really careful when you do it. But the good news is, it's okay because. We believe that we have to have all sorts of sources to help people. There's traditional marketing, which we all realtors get involved in, and then there's other things that stimulate people to go, hey, listen, I really got to sell. Like, for example, if you were an estate owner, let's say you had elderly parents passed away, and you now had an estate, and you lived in Minnesota, and you're like, hey, listen, that was my parents' home. I want to sell it. I don't want to do any repairs. They haven't done any fixing up in the home for a long time. I'll take the $500,000 or minus your fees, and I'm just going to run. There's your instant offer. And they might go, hey, listen, my parents love this home. They lived there for 30 years. I know they didn't do any repairs, but I think I can get $550,000 for it. We say $500,000. It doesn't sell for $550,000. We'll give you $500,000 minus our fees, and then you walk away after 90 days.
So either way.
It's a win-win. Either way you look at it.
Do you ever have someone come to you and thinking, I want to sell this for $450,000, and you guys do your research and you realize it's worth $5,000, and you tell them it's worth more than that?
Yeah.
You say, look, that's good what you're asking for, but you'll say, you probably do say, I think, when we sold our house 4 years ago, I had no idea. And so, we deferred to the realtor, like, how much, and we were throwing numbers around, and some of what he said is, you can sell it for more than that, than what we were thinking, So sometimes that happens, because I don't know. We look at comps, but it's weird in some neighborhoods.
I had one that they called me, and I asked them how much they wanted listed for, and they told me $1,250,000. Okay. And I pulled the comps, and I saw $1,400,000. So I went to the house. I'm like, listen, $1,250,000 is what you want. I think I can get you $1,400,000.
Yeah.
And they said, really? And I'm like, yes, you looked over here, but look at this. And they said, oh, wow, man, if we can get that. And we sold it for $1.4 million in about 10 days, which was really great. Yeah. So, yes, that does happen.
Okay, and there's a benefit. I mean, some people might say, well, maybe, Bernie, you just want it to be at 500 because that's what you said. If you sell it for more, you want to because you make more money that way, too.
I would actually rather sell the home for you and not be involved with the purchase because I have other issues later. I have to then resell the property.
Right. So you'd rather get...
No, I would... This is
way much
guaranteed and the instant offer are a service we provide to give people options.
But they're not something that you want necessarily. Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I don't want that I have to participate in, and this is just one of those things that I would say, hey, listen, I'll participate in this because it benefits you. Yeah. But most people, what they'll do is they'll look at it and go, well, I want to try it at this 575 versus this 500, this 580, and we'll go, that's perfectly fine. It's your home. Why don't we do that? Yeah. And yet, when they have to start getting down, they start going, oh, gosh, I don't want you to even buy it for 500 in the fees because that's too low for me. So where else can we go? And I'll go, well, at 500,000, you're only going to pay a 6% versus a 6% in the marketing fee. Yeah. So that's actually better. And they're like, okay, well, let's do it at 500, and then it sells.
Gotcha. That's good stuff. Real quick, we just have a few minutes left. In terms of inventory out there, it seems like real quick, are they still building as many homes in your sense? I mean, or is it existing inventory? Because like you said, the pool of homes available is growing, right?
Yeah. So well, the thing is, when you look at the housing report,
got a minute. Yeah.
When you look at the housing report in the country, we are actually short homes.
We still okay. I was wondering.
We're short homes, so there's more people that this makes zero sense. We have inventory, and what I'm saying is there's more buyers coming to the table than there is available properties. So new construction is still. I would tell you that about 35 or 40% of the properties that I have pending right now are new construction.
And like in Wilson County, as you say, there's some areas around Mount Juliet where huge developments are in the works. I'm like, who's going to buy all these homes? Every day I see a new one or tall skinnies. I guess they're buying. They're not sitting there.
Well, there's not enough houses for all the people that are moving here, so they have to keep building.
Yeah. How many people move in here every week?
About 100 a day.
Jeez, Bernie, keeps you busy. Hey, it's a real pleasure seeing you. It's just terrific. Learned a lot from you again. Thank you for bringing this stuff in as well. We'll see you again in a month.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back with contact information for him as well and a program you know about tomorrow right after this. Stay with us. That is a wrap. Our thanks to Bernie for coming on. And there you see his contact information. You can go to his website. The number is 615-471-6166. And they sell a lot of houses. Clearly, he knows what he's talking about. And he's got a great staff that I think follows in his footsteps on all of that. So if you need to sell or buy a house, give Bernie a call. Folks, back tomorrow, same time, same place.